So let's start with a really fundamental question. Where do our rights actually come from? Are they something the government grants us, or do they exist before any government is even formed? Well, the answer is found in two completely different theories of law, and it turns out a very common mistake in how we understand them has huge consequences for our system of government. Let's break it down.
Now, this entire explainer is grounded in the work of education researcher Christine Jones. What she did was identify a critical error, an error so common in our legal and history textbooks that it's become this accepted yet totally flawed part of how we're taught the source of American rights.
So here's our roadmap for this. First, we're going to pinpoint that foundational error. Then, we'll dissect the two competing frameworks, one called law as command, and the other, law from nature. After that, we'll look at how these two got so confusingly tangled up. And finally, and this is crucial, we'll unpack the real-world operational consequences of this mistake.
Okay, let's get right into the central problem. There's this idea that the legal scholar William Blackstone is the philosophical source of American natural rights. This isn't just a minor mistake, it's a deep, structural error that basically inverts the entire logic of the American founding.
This is the idea you'll find all over the place, in universities and legal texts, that the English scholar William Blackstone somehow provided the philosophical blueprint for the Declaration of Independence. But as we're about to see, this common belief is a profound misunderstanding. It confuses two completely different and, frankly, incompatible systems. So to really get why this is such a big mistake, we have to first understand Blackstone's actual framework. This is the model of law as a command coming from a superior.
In Blackstone's model, law isn't something you discover through reason. It's something you obey. It's a rule that's handed down from on high. It's a command. And the command originates from a superior, first God, and then, this is the critical step, the sovereign, like a king or parliament, who acts as God's representative on earth.
The logic here is very linear. It's completely top-down. God issues commands. The political sovereign, in England's case Parliament, interprets those commands and applies them as civil law. So the most important point here is that this structure always inevitably leads to the doctrine of sovereign supremacy. The interpreter of the law stands above the people. Now let's contrast that with the framework the American founders actually used. This is the idea that law comes directly from nature itself. In this view, law isn't a command from some external will at all. Instead, it's an internal, rational order that's grounded in the created structure of reality and, well, of human beings. Moral law and the rights that come from it exist before any government is ever formed. The state doesn't create them. Its job is to recognize them. So you can see the logic here is completely inverted. It flows from the bottom up. There's a rational order to reality, what the founders called the laws of nature. Humans, because they have the capacity for reason, possess rights that are inherent to their very nature. And only then is government created by the people for one specific purpose, to secure rights that already exist. All right, let's put them side by side to make this really clear. In the command model, the source of law is the sovereign's will. Rights are just permissions from that sovereign, and the state's role is to issue and enforce the law. But in the nature model, the source of law is created reality itself. Rights are inherent properties of being human, and the state's role is to secure those pre-existing rights. These are not just different, they are fundamentally incompatible systems. Okay, so this brings us to the core of the problem. How in the world did two completely opposing frameworks get so badly confused in modern scholarship? And look, that's a perfectly fair question. If these systems are polar opposites, why do so many people get them mixed up? Well, the answer is that a few superficial similarities have been allowed to mask a deep structural divide. This is where the confusion starts. You see, both frameworks use words like God and natural law. And it's true, Blackstone's commentaries on law were widely read in the American colonies, but they were read as a procedural guide. So scholars see this surface-level overlap and they mistakenly assume the underlying philosophies are the same. They're not. The result is what you could call a conceptual inversion. The quote says it all. The very theory that justifies the absolute power of a sovereign, like the British Parliament, is incorrectly presented as the foundation for a political system that was created to reject that very idea. It's a fundamental logical contradiction. Now, I want to be really clear about something. This is not just some dusty historical debate or academic trivia.
This distinction is a civic necessity because it has direct operational consequences for the relationship between you, the citizen, and the state.
This all boils down to one fundamental question you have to answer. Is a right something you possess simply because of what you are, a human being? Or is it a privilege that you have because the government allows you to have it? The entire structure of constitutional self-government turns on the answer to that question.
Let's use a practical test case, a state of emergency. Under a law from nature framework, rights are inalienable. That means they cannot be legitimately suspended by the government, even in a crisis. But under a law as command framework, the same sovereign authority that grants rights in the first place can also suspend them whenever it deems it necessary.
And that right there is the key. This distinction explains why so many legal systems derived from that English model, which is based on sovereign supremacy, have provisions to suspend rights. The American system, on the other hand, was explicitly designed to reject that entire premise. Its foundation asserts that your rights exist prior to and above the state, which means an emergency cannot erase them.
And this is the ultimate stake. When a society forgets this critical distinction, it loses the language, the actual vocabulary, to defend its own liberty. The debate dangerously shifts from whether the government can take away rights to a simple negotiation over how and when it will do so. Understanding this foundational difference isn't just an academic exercise. It is absolutely essential for preserving a government that is limited by law.